Hello. Events of the last few days definitely require a commentary. Yet we're going to start with what happened before, specifically with the ultimatum to Russia by the group of political actors that I would like to name the Four Tank Men and the Dog, after the famous novel, because the Prime Minister of Poland took part in it as well. Professor Eustafiev called them the Gang of Four. This ultimatum has two important characteristics. First, it was very restrictive, leaving Russia no room for maneuvering. Second, it failed to achieve the desired effect in a sense that no public official in Russia supported it or even left any comment. However, in the media, this ultimatum triggered an avalanche of various hypotheses, suggestions, provocations, hints, and false alarms. So a number of bloggers and political scientists were trying hard, and it was obvious that some of them were paid to do so. Moreover, there were two legends of dinosaur. This time, I'm not going to elaborate on them, but I will simply mention them. According to the first one, the ultimatum was meant to be voiced by Modi and not by the Gang of Four. But Modi succeeded in getting himself off the hook by canceling his visit to Moscow for the May 9th Victory Day celebrations. The second legend stated that the ultimatum was meant to be delivered by Xi Jinping. He, however, ended up having a conversation at the Kremlin and was presented with some serious arguments, after which he understood that it would not be a good idea to personally take part in this ultimatum. Attempts to pull Trump into this also did not work to the degree expected. As a result, the situation ended up suspended in the air. Putin, at the same time, offered to have direct negotiations, and then attempts were made to put pressure on Russia, intended to turn these negotiations into a de facto political defeat of Russia, regardless of how it would be framed on paper. Once again, we see a colossal number of media leaks and many other things. Here I would like to say one important thing based on my governmental experience. It seems like Putin had had some plan straight from the start, yet no one knew about it. Most of the information channels through which we typically receive the leaks remained silent. However, the impression was made, or some people convinced themselves, that this time Putin might actually be agreeable. For this reason, numerous information networks and their leaders started doing their favorite business: sell to the West their political success, their influence in the Kremlin. This what led to enormous amount of leaks. First saying that Lavrov would be the head of the delegation, then that Ushakov would be the head, then Medinsky. Well, you can say that the last statement was true. Medinsky ended up leading the delegation. Sure, but the problem is, this time Medinsky's team is very different from what it was in 2022. It is absolutely obvious that the current people are not going to sign a capitulation of Russia. They're much more suited to accept a capitulation of Ukraine. However, the association between Medinsky today and Medinsky in 2022 remained, allowing us to decisively end the negotiations at any moment. Well, I'm getting too far into the future right now. Anyway, all the leaks I described were generated outside of Putin's office. It was obvious because those who normally have access to the office, for example, Dmitry Peskov, said nothing about these negotiations, despite being pressured by the heads of the information networks, starving to get any real information. It is possible that the people with access did not know anything because this time Putin discussed the matter with different advisors. Or they did know but remained silent. I do not know the details about the Kremlin situation, so I'm not going to develop this topic any further. Still, there were different possible ways to interpret the situation, and that was the reason that the attempts to put pressure on Russia continued. There is another hypothesis, however, that Luis de Silva, the president of Brazil, while returning from Beijing, landed in Moscow and was definitely trying to meet Putin. The meeting did not happen. There is a legend stating that Silva's escort left Vnukovo airport and then, at some point, had to turn around and come back. This was undoubtedly a strong démarche by de Silva, and at the same time, a no less strong response from the Putin side. Professor Yestafiev gives his analysis of this situation to subscribers of his Telegram channel, but this is definitely a political topic, and I'm not going to dive into this. Here is my summary. What Putin did means several things. First, Putin was not going to surrender, and he made it very clear. Second, Putin does not control the media. So, from his standpoint, it would make no sense to allow any media leaks, because the media were already stuffed with the colossal amount of false and outright harmful information to the greatest extent possible. That is why he remained silent. Silence cannot be interpreted in any harmful way, whereas any phrase one says can. Third, all the information networks and their leaders revealed themselves. Recently, several editors of Telegram channels have been arrested. We do not know the exact names yet, but this isn't that important right now. It does not actually matter whether these are the exact people causing the troubles for Russia at the moment, or they were arrested prior to the ultimatum for something else they had done beforehand. The very fact of the arrest is a clear message demonstrating what's been going on. Next, it is obvious that Trump finally got himself off the hook with the ultimatum. It is too early for us to discuss the potential Trump-Putin summit, and it is very clear that if they arranged anything, Putin will remain silent. Compared to Putin, Trump uses the exact opposite strategy in his communications with the media, as Trump himself fills the media with an enormous amount of information, so the networks can never catch up with him. On top of this, Trump frequently changes his statements, making any possible interpretations difficult. Putin, by contrast, prefers to remain silent. At the same time, neither Trump nor Putin controls the mainstream media in his respective countries. I don't care that much what Trump is planning on doing to solve this problem, but here in Russia, I really hope the situation is going to change, as Sergei Glazyev being appointed Deputy State Secretary of the Union State of Belarus and Russia. Belarus has also had its media holding company, but under the previous leadership, it unfortunately remained under the liberal control. Let's see what happens. What is left to say in conclusion? First, once again, Putin seems to have outplayed anyone else. I would like to point out that Putin always does so once he enters the game himself. Let's hope this will continue. Second, Europe suffered a major defeat, serious enough to make the Polish and the French crawl back from the ultimatum of the four tankmen. Well, all of us have always known that the Polish aren't real tankmen, except for those who fought in Wojska Polska. As far as the French go, what do you expect from Macron? He's that kind of macaron. Regarding the English and the Germans, they continue their intimidating rhetoric. Now, it is time to mention another important event: an attempt to seize the Russian ship, the oil tanker, in Baltic Sea. Remarkably, this wasn't done by Germans. No, not even by Danish, but by the great warriors from Estonia. This means that the ultimatum of the four, well, they wanted to push it at any cost. It was a very important factor, most likely related to consolidation of the European team. Also, all of this means that no positive leverage is left to their disposal. I think we have already reached the point that we need to use military convoys to protect our ships heading to our ports. There is no other way. And we need to understand that we're going back to the wonderful times of piracy with all the consequences to follow. I think the Estonians will be explained that what they did was wrong because they acted crudely and attempted to seize the ship in the neutral waters, which is piracy. If this had been done back in the Middle Ages and the perpetrators had been caught, they would have been executed by hanging from the yardarm. All of this means one thing: the moment of collapse is rapidly approaching. I mean the economic collapse. Nothing can be done about this. From Trump's perspective, the sooner the collapse happens, the better. I'm not sure if he would do anything to accelerate the process, but what has been happening in the world is certainly not postponing it. I would like to conclude by saying that on May 17th, we're having a webinar to discuss potential consequences of this collapse for investors in private savings. So I invite anyone interested to sign up through my Telegram channel. Once again, Saturday, May 17th at noon, Moscow time. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.